In Atilloia there were two types of prisons. One is a church prison, like the one in which Ivan was imprisoned, where those who used malicious magic and harmed people were imprisoned. The other was located in the depths of the imperial palace. The first was guarded by the knights of the church, while the second was under the responsibility of the soldiers of the emperor. Fenrik was in the lower prison. Even in its most guarded parts, where political prisoners are held. The cold air had frozen in place until it became unbearably heavy. Fenrik sat expressionless, staring silently at the small, high window. The culprit appeared calm and unconcerned, but the strange thing was that the trembling ones were the guards themselves. "I don't know if what we're doing is right," some soldiers exchanged guards in front of his cell, whispering in faint, barely audible voices. "Is it possible for Duke Fenrik to be imprisoned like this?" The soldiers' anxiety was natural. The situation in Atilloia at that time was extremely chaotic. Successive murders, and the death of both the archbishop and the greatest magician, Ivan. Then the emperor comes to imprison one of his closest associates, without knowing it, Fenrik. Accusing him of being a suspect? This is completely illogical. Dietrich wanted in any way to link the deaths of Atari Hanan and Noah Duvern to Fenrik. But as with Siegfried, others' opinions were not. And what benefit can he expect from killing them in the first place? But, aren't there rumors about his connection to Mrs.? As Vidar once told Presepe, rumors started spreading everywhere. Its summary is simple, that Duke Fenrik fell in love with Presepe. And this is precisely why it seems so unbelievable. How could a man who was the closest confidant to the emperor, and then an honored duke, lack something in order to risk his position? That's actually true. But, could he really be executed for this charge? Coming from a lowly background to the position of duke would not have been possible if Fenrik had not proven his competence, so much so that no one dared to object. His own soldiers, as well as the soldiers who fought under his banner on the great battlefields, could not suddenly turn against him. On the contrary, there was a suspicion among them that he had been unjustly imprisoned because he had fallen into the wrath of the emperor. Especially since he repeatedly saved their lives in areas covered in blood. My heart feels tight because of all this. For him to be sitting quietly like that makes it even heavier. While the soldiers were breathing a sigh of relief and looking at each other in confusion, Fenrik remained immersed in deep thought without saying a word. My soldiers, he was counting in his mind the number of free soldiers who were still able to move. Just as Dietrich had imprisoned him on these flimsy charges according to a well-thought-out plan, Fenrik had also prepared for such a day. As he once said to Kevin, "If the emperor catches me in his trap and ties my feet, Dietrich will not hesitate to throw me into prison." Then, the words of a conversation he had had with Kevin a long time ago came back to Fenrik's ears. "And what do we do then? When I am arrested, move the soldiers immediately. Make them head towards the border. But, in a number that does not attract attention, they move invisibly." However, they made sure that news of their movements leaked to the ears of the nobles. As if it was a bait thrown at them. But the emperor may use this as an excuse to accuse you of treason. You realize this? True, unless the Forbidden Forest incident is mentioned, he will have nothing to convict me of. Diarca's soldiers were participating in the war, but their first mission was to protect the emperor. It is precisely for this reason that Dietrich gathered them together long ago, before he thought of any betrayal. It is true that they participated in battles, but those who fought the hardest were the knights of the church and the soldiers of Fenrik. Now that more than half of the knights were dead, any rumor about Duke Fenrik's treason would not only raise suspicions about him, but would also make the nobles extremely anxious. This was exactly what Fenrik intended to exploit. More than half of the noble houses in Atilloia have interests with me. In the midst of this turmoil, they will find themselves faced with an inevitable choice: which side should they join? Then, they will realize that my hand is the one most worthy of being shaken. As for Dietrich, he will be the clear loser in front of everyone's eyes. Those who had turned against the emperor were desperate to break Fenrik out of prison. And let's be honest, it wasn't just because Dietrich was in a weak position. Rather, because the execution of Fenrik on charges of treason would bring calamity upon them themselves, as they had close relations with him that could not escape punishment. Moreover, Dietrich himself had removed the second crown prince to seize the throne, so the emergence of any signs of new rebellion would not be in his favor at all. It had already been a full day, so there was no doubt that Kevin had moved the soldiers. Rumors may be starting to spread now. I no longer have any excuse to get Presepe out of here. The redness of Fenrik's eyes shook softly. But, was the pretext that important? Indeed, Fenrik, nothing is more important than a pretext. Always like this. Dietrich might have thought so, but Fenrik was never like him. Even if he himself had sat on the emperor's throne, he would have risked losing everything so that Presepe could remain by his side. After I reach the West Tower, I will take Presepe with me, but his ideas were not complete. His red eyes trembled when they caught the moonlight through the small window. He seemed to have frozen for a moment, then suddenly stood up. The Duke? The guards were confused and retreated in panic, while the creaking of iron resounded throughout the lower prison. Fenrik advanced until he reached the bars of the cell, and held them with a veined hand, staring at their faces with bloody eyes, and then said sternly, "Open." What? I said open up. Now, right now. And at that very moment, monsters, a terrified scream tore through the prison, causing the faces of the soldiers to freeze. It's the monsters. Entire hordes are approaching. Their numbers are much greater this time. West Tower. Head to the West Tower. Murmurs rose, not only from the soldiers but from everyone in the prison. If you don't want to die, open the gate now. Fenrik shouted in a tone capable of shattering the bars, as if he would spring up at any moment and tear them apart with his hands. Behind him, through the small window, swarms of black monsters appeared to be attacking the Western Tower. He did not know what consciousness emerged from the lower prison. Ah! Save us! Save us! Everything he saw was pure hell. Dietrich's soldiers, the knights, the priests of the church, and even the wizards of the magic tower who remained silent after Ivan's escape, all of them fighting the monsters together. The numbers were overwhelming, even compared to what they faced in the Forbidden Forest attack. The monsters have completely surrounded the tower. Or rather, it began to annihilate anyone who tried to approach it. Vidar, Fenrik gritted his teeth, fighting endlessly as he made his way through the inferno. The torn pieces of the monsters fell like a torrent of blood and flesh, their red blood drenching his body, but he paid no attention to it. What matters to him now is another matter. Fenrik. Duke Fenrik. Those who knew him shouted for help, but he did not turn around. He continued to fight while running quickly, jumping over accumulated corpses, until he began to climb the stairs of the tower. From the womb of hell he ascended, his body stained with blood, until he reached the door of Presepe's room. He bit his lip hard, his face cold as stone. The tower was empty. She wasn't anywhere. Siegfried was alone, his body torn apart, writhing on the ground covered in blood, moaning faintly.